Do you know what's the best thing about summers in Berlin? We don't have a beach. People go to lakes like it's a 70s slasher movie. And lakes have trees, and trees have shadow, and shadow is good for your fresh tattoo. If you live in a beautiful sunny place near the sea and you're reaching for a new piece, you don't have to wait until the fall. Don't worry, just take a plane and come here. You can have some fun during the weekend, which here lasts until Tuesday, sometimes Wednesday, then a day or two of recovery, and then boom, new tattoo. Click the link in the description below and fill in the booking form.
Hola, Pato. Yep, I'm wearing a bathrobe this week. My wife wouldn't help me with the outfit, so that's the way I'm rolling. Deal with it, try to focus on what I say and not the way I look, and we'll go through it together. We're slowly but surely coming to the end of season 1. These 20 episodes leading all the way to July 3rd. So I think we cannot postpone it any longer. We have to address the big debate, the elephant in the room. Apprentice versus self-taught. Just thinking about this conversation, truly, my body gets rid of my soul. Is that a thing? No. My soul leaves my body? I don't know. I'm annoyed of the idea of this conversation. Not so much because of its modern version, but more the old school one, right? It used to be, can you even call yourself a tattooer if you didn't have an apprenticeship? Yes, moron, of course you can. It was such a, I don't know, a hypocritical conversation to have with some old school tattooers, right? Some of them learned like this on their own and were absolutely self-taught, but they would argue that it was a different time. Some of them went through the system, but their mentor was self-taught. And the people that had the longest pedigree, you can trace it maybe, like 3, 4, 5 generations until you find someone who is self-taught. So, yeah, fuck you. But luckily, that conversation evolved a little bit. I mean, I'm sure, for sure, there's someone that is still having this conversation in a bar somewhere. But for the most part, it evolved into, okay, let's say that both paths to becoming a tattooer are somewhat legit. Which one is better? Okay, this is a more interesting conversation. And it's not so binary. It's not so much like yes and no. And it doesn't attract the type of morons that are attracted to these like absolute, because, you know, life and all beautiful things in life are not that simple. So if you want to fast forward to the conclusion of this episode, I guess, you know, it would be, well, it depends. It depends on a lot of things. But I don't know, based on my own experience, I even go back and forth between the theories. I think it depends not only on the circumstances, on the moment, on the place, on the person that is gonna mentor you. It also depends on who you are and who you are at the time. All these factors have to be. All these factors have to be taken into consideration when answering that question. And the question is actually not, what is it better? Self-taught or apprenticeship? The answer is what fits me the best. Okay, familia, no more reading exercises. You know what time it is, I know what time it is, it's donation time. We're of course super thankful if you like, comment, subscribe and share. No complaint there whatsoever. But we also need some money. A man has to eat. That's why we've launched a GoFundMe campaign to collect donations not only for this channel but also to help support my other two projects, Newfob and Hiragana Studio, which are like my babies, and both of them, not one but both of them, are non-profits that support independent tattooers. The work that I do there is pro bono, which is a really fancy way to say for free. So the cool thing about GoFundMe compared to other crowdfunding platforms is that it's not all or nothing. This means that you don't need to reach the campaign's goal to have access to the donations. So every donation that you send minus a little percentage for the platform will find its way to us and help us sustain these projects. Click the link in the description below, read a bit more about the campaign and help us continue the good work. When I was a kid, and by kid I mean I was in high school probably, I spent all the hours of all the classes designing tattoos. Designing what would end up being my first tattoo, designing tattoos for friends, designing imaginary tattoos, designing tattoos for characters that I was drawing. So I was essentially obsessed. I was anyway that kid who would run the whole time with painted hands and forearms and whatnot since I was a toddler essentially. But I remember having that passion for designing, and it never crossed my mind that I could become a tattooer. It was just there. I guess that's how representation works in a strange way. I mean, not to minimize the people who actually suffer a lack of representation, but I guess looking at the people who were tattooers, I could not see myself. I had never met a tattooer that looked anything like me, or especially that behaved anything like me, right? It was always tough people, whether they were men or women. It was always really rough people, and I don't know, I thought I knew I loved them, I knew I was fascinated by them, but I always saw this separation that would make me just a client and a collector and a consumer, but never actually a tattooer, despite how much fun I had designing, drawing, figuring out placements and whatnot. So the first time I was low-key offered an apprenticeship, I was 19 years old, and it was in what is arguably still nowadays one of the best tattoo studios in Barcelona, LTW. And yeah, I just came psycho as I am with a full notebook of variations of the same design in like different I don't know, like line values, with shading, without shading, more in a Chicano style, more in a Cubist style and whatnot, all these around the subject matter of a skull that me and my friends were getting tattooed, right? And instead of just like bringing 3 shitty references from the internet, I just drew a catalog of 25 flash that then we checked together with the tattooer and decided which ones would fit better for which of us and for the placement we had in mind and whatnot. And the tattooer, she said like, shit, you're like really clean and serious and thorough. I think you would be great at these if you're ever interested in an apprenticeship. And I was like, no, like, did you see me? Like, I have nothing to do with you guys. No, I'm going to be an illustrator or a painter or something like this, but thank you. So I think I only now, or like, not now, but only years and years and years later, it took me, I think, another, I don't know, 6-7 years to figure out that I wanted to tattoo. And by the time I started, I was just pulling my hair and going like, what the hell, I should have taken that. Imagine all these years already tattooing, and all these years in these like super reputable and famous studio in Barcelona. You would be killing it, you would be technically so good, blah, 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 blah. But if I would have followed that path, probably I would have fell in love with the old school way of being a tattooer. I would have been taught the complexity of American traditional tattooing. I would have probably fallen in love with classic designs. I would have fallen in love with the whole lifestyle around being a tattooer. And I would be a very different person. I would have a very different output in terms of my body of work. I would have a very different way of looking at younger people. I would run a very different studio. I don't know, I would have a completely different life. So, I don't know, in my case, I think for as great as that opportunity was, I think I honestly dodged a bullet. I love my life, I love where I am, I love where I live, the people that I work with, so it had to be like this. So in my case, I could not say I'm fully self-taught, but I figured out a weird way and had like a few people that were key for me to be where I am, right? First and foremost, my friend Georg Schatz, shout out. Not only he gave me the first opportunities, but he was chasing me, trying to convince me to start this journey. And I was skeptical and I was not really sure, and I thought I was above this, and I was coming from fine arts, and I was like, I don't know, like, yeah, I've been hearing this thing of you should be a tattooer since I was 19, but I don't know if it's really my thing. And he really, with a lot of patience and care and love, took all my doubts one by one and, solved them until I had no excuses left. And with him and his help, showing me the way he worked, which was not really fitting mine. He had a very realistic approach, so the way that he used to work was not really applicable to my work. But with a lot of time and effort and patience and kindness, he opened me the doors of his private space. Then he opened me the door to a tattoo studio that friends were opening. And so every week I would just take a shared car on a Thursday from Berlin, then make my way to Leipzig, then spend the night there, work with him in his private space in Leipzig on Fridays, and then Saturday mornings we would drive from Leipzig through to Dresden to the tattoo studio, work there, get a little bit acquainted with the space, the material, equipment and whatnot, and then back to Berlin. And that was the only way that I had to get information. I'll talk about it in another episode, but Berlin, besides AKA, had nothing. No contemporary tattoo studios. It was a completely different landscape than the one we have nowadays. So if you were not connected, you could go fuck yourself. So yeah, Georg gave me my beginning. Mauro, my friend Mauro, opened his own studio and saw potential in me. I still don't know what he saw in me, but like really, really early on in my career, he gave me a spot as a resident. Arguably, I was absolutely not ready for it, but he knew I would somehow figure it out. So with the help of my colleagues at that studio, who helped me be an unofficial apprentice, covering me whenever I didn't feel safe to take on certain projects, and explaining me behind the scenes, away from clients and away from the boss, basics that I should have known, is where I got my footing as a tattooer. And then bear in mind that I'm not only a tattooer, but I'm also a manager and a studio owner. So every step of the way, I found someone who became my mentor. When it comes to management, when it comes to being a brand guardian or whatever, when it comes to managing a team, I've learned from Madame Unicat, I've learned from Wahid Eshat, I've learned from a lot of people that I've crossed paths with along the way, right? So this was a very long segue to the fact that at some point I felt like all these people giving me input turned into noise instead of helpful information, and I removed myself from an open environment with colleagues and with mentors and with bosses, and I closed myself in a private space that I created home, and I stayed there. I think for like 3 or 4 years I was working entirely on my own, not at the beginning, but kind of like weirdly halfway through, right? And there I developed something that I think is the biggest contra for being self-taught. This idea of fake it till you make it, right? You're inviting people into a space that is unusual for a tattooer. In Berlin, not so much as in other places, but people tend to be a little bit on alert when you are going to get a tattoo and you realize that someone lives there, right? You're going to someone's flat. So there was a lot of performative greeting in order to show very quickly that you're in good hands, that I'm a pro, that you should not be scared or uncomfortable. And it helped me to relax people, right? So I convinced myself that flexing and showing all these like theories and technical talk was not so much to boost my ego, but to put my client's mind at ease, right? And you start pretending that you know more than you actually know, and you are always used to being alone with clients. So over time you lose the sense that you're actually saying nonsense, and you find yourself in a room full of tattooers behaving the same way with your clients, and people look at you and go like, the fuck are you talking about? That's actually not true at all. Or like, that's so much unnecessary information. And that's not the actual bad part about being self-taught. Is the fact that the longer you are, the more difficult it is to put that mask down and go like, dude, I actually have no fucking idea what I'm talking about. And if you're not able to do that, you're not able to admit that you don't know shit. And if you are not able to admit that you don't know shit, there's no way you can evolve as a tattooer, right? So over time, I've come to the conclusion that yes, a bad mentor is definitely worse than no mentor at all. That's for sure. And maybe we can talk in another episode about what can a bad mentor do for you right? Because you go like, I mean, it's information at the end of the day, right? You can disregard what you don't need, and you can just select the part that is interesting. But it doesn't work like that. When someone that is in a position of power, because has all the knowledge and the experience and the accolades and the success, tells you anything, you take that person's word, and it goes somewhere in your head, and it stays there like a claw. So when your mentor doesn't stick only to giving you technical information, but also gives you their personal opinion about aesthetics or even politics or etiquette, when it comes to the world of tattooing, it's very difficult to shake those dogmatic views off your head. So I don't know, definitely. And of course, this is leaving absolutely aside people that are abusive and that, abuse their power, and that create essentially traumatized tattooers that then just perpetuate that hatred and that trauma. So leaving that aside, even when you work with a decent guy, just doesn't really know how to give part of the necessary information, and gives it in package with a ton of shit that no one asked him for, even that clumsy good guy can fuck you up. But leaving aside that scenario in which you have had the bad luck of landing under not the best mentor, I think nowadays I stand on the side of an apprenticeship is actually better. It gives you, it makes you comfortable with the idea of always being the person that knows the least in a room. And I think that is really important. It takes that pressure of the fact of asking things. You're actually rewarded for asking things, instead of being punished and looking at you like you should know that. If you are self-taught and you always present yourself as more professional or more experienced than you actually are, you have to fake that you know the things. And when you're exposed, people look at you like, gotcha. And people that I've crossed paths with that come from an apprenticeship, those who come from a healthy, productive apprenticeship, never lose that ability of being comfortable with people thinking that they know less than they actually know. And they never get mad when information is given to them. Even if they know it already, they don't feel offended by the fact that you didn't know that they already knew that. And that allows them to perhaps hear a different take on something that they thought they already knew, and discover a new way of doing things that is much better. Generally speaking, it makes people way more open to learn after the apprenticeship is completed. So if I would need to put a nice little bow on this, I think I would say that this apprenticeship versus self-taught is a little bit like the tortoise or tortoise, or however you say that, the fucking turtle and the hare. Why is it not called the turtle and the rabbit? Why it has to be like tortoise and the hare? You know what I'm talking about, right? So it's always the same. If you're self-taught, you start really fucking fast, and then you reach a point where you can get away with charging enough money, and maybe you get invited into some small studios that don't have a lot of scrutiny on your background, and then you stagnate. And people that do an apprenticeship start really fucking slow. There's a period of months and months in which you really question, what the fuck am I doing here? I'm not progressing. I have the feeling that if it wasn't for these bunch of assholes, I would actually move faster and I would learn more on my own, watching YouTube videos and just doing trial error, than actually just doing what these idiots are telling me to do. But there is a certain science to the rhythm at which you can absorb information, and it's very difficult for an apprentice to know when they're ready to acquire certain information, and especially to judge when they're ready for certain challenges. So when information and challenges are given to you in the right amount at the right time, and making sure that you always stay in your comfort zone, that whenever you come out of it, you come in the right amount, just to keep things interesting and spicy, but not to overwhelm you and make you drown in water. People tend to have a better beginning. And like I was saying, never ever lose that ability to ask a stupid question in a room full of killers, right? So it's been interesting to see the apprentice at Hiragana overcome the frustration of how slow things were moving, and seeing people around him that were starting at the same moment going way beyond where he could have ever imagined to be in a really short amount of time. And now he's fucking lapping everyone with the technique, with the way he navigates a space, a studio, with the way he conducts himself when talking to tattooers, knowing what you can ask, what you cannot ask, just being in their presence. And I can tell already that in no time he will be traveling way more than the self-taught people around him. He will be way more self-secure when taking on challenges, and especially always having that ability to fall back and knock on someone's door and ask the stupid question that someone who is self-taught cannot ask, because they sold themselves as pros when they weren't. So again, it's just a matter of who you are, what do you respond the best to, and what's your timeline. But know that all the speed and all the advantage that you're getting by being self-taught at the beginning, then things slow down. It's not a drama. You make it at the end to the same destination, but it definitely slows down. The best way to combine the best of both worlds, I guess, would be, even if you're self-taught, to be always very upfront with what you don't know, always very upfront with your clients, and whoever gets nervous and feels like you might not be ready to work with them and to give them a tattoo, they'll walk away and someone else will come that feels confident and feels like they want to give you that opportunity. So always stay curious, always ask questions, and if asking a question closes you a door, another two will open. That's it from the Big Lebowski this week. 25, 30, are you still there? If you are, please like, share, comment, check the GoFundMe and donate, and subscribe if you haven't already. And I'll see you then next week, guys. Have a great one.